vida passa, flutuando pelo ar. Prana que nos dá a energia que todos merecem. Mesmo assim nem todos sabem viver e usar essa prana para a nossa vantagem. Todos nós fazemos parte deste universo. Cabe a nós cumprir a parte que temos, então sorriamos e não nos preocupemos, que o remédio está nos nossos corações. A vida vai e vem e aqui estamos outra vez, nascendo e morrendo, sempre esquecendo a sensatez. Ainda bem que a hora de acordar não está mais além, e assim podemos ser aquele amor que cai sempre bem, o amor que cai sempre bem, o amor que aquece a alma, calor que rejuvenesce e nos faz sentir tão vivos. Sofrimento passa a perna, mas faz parte do balanço, se quiser lidar com tudo. Desde que saiba o mais importante no reencontro do nosso eu, autoconfiança vale tudo para reanimar, para aprender mais da vida, surfando, entendendo o sabor de cada erro. A vida vai e vem e aqui estamos outra vez, nascendo e morrendo, sempre esquecendo a sensatez. Ainda bem que a hora de acordar não está mais além, assim podemos ser aquele amor que cai sempre bem, o amor que cai sempre bem, o amor que aquece a alma, calor que rejuvenesce e nos faz sentir tão vivos. Oi, oi, oi. Oi, oi, oi. En keer met mij. Goed zo. A vida dá lugar para tudo, e quando isso acontecer, iremos tão rápido como a brisa da vida que vai, vai. Vida que vai, a vida vai e vem, e aqui estamos outra vez, nascendo e morrendo, sempre esquecendo a sensatez. Ainda bem que a hora de acordar não está mais além, que assim podemos ser aquele amor que cai sempre bem, o amor que aquece a alma, o amor que aquece a alma, calor que rejuvenesce e nos faz sentir tão vivos. Ai, ai, ai. Oi, oi, oi. Oi, oi, oi. Oi, oi, oi. Vida vai, vai, vida vai, vai, vida vai, vai, vida vai, vai. Vida vai e vai, vida vai e vai. Oh, 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 oh. Oi, oi, oi. Oi, oi, oi. De Julieburg. Oi, oi, oi. Nog één keer, voordat we afsluiten. Oi, oi, oi. Partnerschaps, toch? Dank jullie wel. Ik ben Poliana. Jean-Philippe, Angelina.
Thank you, Poliana Vieira and Junior and let me say it right, Angelina on piano. Thank you all for coming. So these musicians are a duo to keep an eye on. After her education, after she graduated as a filmmaker at the Willem de Koning Academy in Rotterdam, Poliana decided to focus on her biggest passion, which is music, luckily for us. And she has performed on many stages already, among which at the North Sea Jazz Festival and in the talk show De Wereld Draait Door for the Dutch, a primetime talk show on Dutch television. And today she will perform two of her new songs from the from the album Moods for us. Well, thank you all for coming. Welcome. At the opening of the academic year at the Netherlands Institute of Advanced Study. Welcome to the people who are following us on live stream. This is a unique moment in our history at NIAS, because this is the first time our openings event starts in times of COVID-19, which is very special, and I feel very privileged that we are able to be here and to host this event here at the Film Museum I in Amsterdam, and that we live in the times where we have the techniques to have a live stream audience as well. So welcome to you all. Welcome to our co-sponsors, and welcome, a special warm welcome to our new fellows who have arrived this week. Welcome to you all. Well, today we will have a nice program for you, I hope. Yes, so we will start. We hope to give you a nice overview, a nice feeling of what NIAS stands for, and what we mean by being or striving to be an intellectual haven for all. We will first start with a video welcome message of the president of the Royal Academy of Arts and Science, of which NIAS is one of the institutes. And then we'll have a welcoming speech of the director of NIAS, Willem Duyvendak, who will share with you some thoughts on why it is so important to create and provide an intellectual haven for all, but at the same time, why the challenges are so big and why it is so hard to establish, actually. Then we will have a snapshot of 6 fellows who have currently arrived of this year group, who will present in 3 minutes their research project they will be working on at NIAS. And I believe this combination of this almost random combination of 6 presenters give a nice indication of how diverse our group is, our fellows group is. So we have artists in residence, we have writers, we have journalists, we have scholars from within the social sciences, from humanities, even the life sciences, and people from over, I think we're 14 countries, from 14 different countries with various educational backgrounds and cultural backgrounds. And I think the 6 people who will present themselves today to you will give a nice overview of who we have in the house this year. Let me see if I don't forget anything. And then after the 6 very brief presentations, I will have a discussion here on stage with one of our co-sponsors, the Academy of Arts, which is also a part of the Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Science. And we will have a discussion with Micha Hamel, who is the chairman of the Arts Science track of the Academy of Arts, and with an alumni, our former artist in residence, Glas. But this is all to come. We will start now with a video message by Ineke Sluiter, president of KNW, Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Science. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Netherlands Institute for Advanced Study, one of the treasures of the Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Sciences. Our academy, the KNAW, not only has a membership of distinguished scholars and scientists in all disciplines, it is also very proud to host the oldest Institute for Advanced Study in Europe, NIAS, and moreover one that is specifically dedicated to the humanities and the social sciences. And there is work to do in these areas. If the corona pandemic has made anything clear, it is how profoundly society, on a collective and individual level, has been affected. This is not just a medical or technical emergency. We need to understand what this means for human culture, for the arts, for the economy, for our legal and political systems, for human behavior and interactions, for our sense of self, for inequality, for education. We need solutions for the issues in all of these areas based on solid research and profound thought. We need the humanities and the social sciences more than ever. We are opening the academic year today and welcoming this year's group of fellows. And I think I have a pretty good idea of what this year may bring you, for I am one of you in more ways than one. As a classicist, I was trained in a number of the sub-disciplines of the humanities, and I work closely with social scientists. But I also had the privilege of spending a semester at NIAS myself, back in 2012. If I'm not mistaken, each of you may have an exhausting period behind you. You will be yearning for the mental space and the actual time to think, for the opportunity to play around with ideas, literally to toy with them, to luxuriate in them, and to radically reject ones that are found wanting. You'll have intellectual company here, with time, energy, and interest for the back and forth of intellectual exchange. I hope that you will all feel filled anew with the creative energy needed to do your best work yet. That is the mental picture that I'd like you to keep in mind. That's what it means to be in an intellectual haven. Haven?
Good afternoon. Welcome to all of you, especially here in I, and also I know that quite some people are online. Also very welcome. It has been a tough year. These are challenging times. The second semester of the last academic year was, of course, heavily influenced by COVID-19. We did our best by moving our community online and reinventing ourselves as a hybrid organization. But at the same time, we try to understand what COVID meant and means for our work, how the self-isolation affected our thinking, our relations, and our health. We took the time to reflect and discuss the impact of COVID on society, how the pandemic influences the place of science amidst fake news and conspiracy theories, how it would affect the future of care, of social relations, of notions of proximity, of home. You can find reflections on these questions by NIAS fellows in this book titled Food for Thought. Everyone present today here at I and online will receive a digital copy of the book in their mailbox. Our ambition to be an intellectual haven for our fellows is still relevant and pertinent as always. But what exactly is an online haven? How do we ensure that our space feels as a haven, an intellectual haven, where one is free to ask questions, to doubt, and explore collectively, also for the fellows who can't physically be here, or hopefully not yet here, but who are part of our NIAS community as well. Let me say somewhat more about our ambition to be an intellectual haven for all. When we reflect on the notion of haven, the histories of institutes for advanced study are interesting because they tell us a lot about the place of science in society, about the boundaries between society, politics, and academia, or the lack thereof. The start and development of the first Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton was directly related to the coming to power of German Nazism and the Nazification of German universities, pushing many scholars out of the country, or worse. It's not a coincidence that totalitarian ideologies and regimes attack intellectual havens, free spaces of thought and research. For example, more recently, the Collegium Budapest was one of the first institutions forced to close by Orban. These are examples in which boundaries between spheres, in this case politics and science, are no longer respected. Science becomes politicized and subordinated to political ideologies. The irony is that this usually happens when politicians claim that science itself has become ideological and too political. Take the example of gender studies, a well-respected discipline by now that is often disqualified as gender ideology by political ideologues. The defense of the autonomy of science is as necessary as is the defense of expertise as such. Being in a haven also implies being at a calm place. Ineke just talked about that as well. And last year's topic of the opening event was slow science, in which we try to elaborate on that point. I celebrate that science at NIAS, in terms of pressure and pace, is probably the calmest, slowest, and least competitive place in the Netherlands. This time to reflect, to pause, to question, to invent, to read, to think has become scarce at many institutes for higher education. Nevertheless, I don't want NIAS to become popular because conditions at universities are further deteriorating. I want NIAS and other Institute for Advanced Studies to be attractive because of our characteristics as a close-knit, truly interdisciplinary intellectual community that is open, non-competitive, diverse, and inclusive for scholars, writers, journalists, and artists. Don't get me wrong. Emphasizing the autonomy of our institution, our haven, does not imply a plea for a return of academic ivory towers. In fact, as many of you will hopefully have noticed, we have been opening up, reaching out to new audiences and bringing science back to the public. We are committed to sharing knowledge with various audiences and contribute to contemporary political and public debates. But let me come to the even more difficult part of our ambition, being an intellectual haven for all. Some of you might have frowned while reading the title of this afternoon event. Seriously? The most exclusive academic institution of the Netherlands has the ambition to be inclusive? My answer to those skeptics is a clear yes, we do. Particularly institutions that are difficult to get in, so very exclusive, should make all efforts to select on the basis of inclusive criteria, not on the basis of established categories, powerful networks, dominant genders, or hegemonic methodological approaches. Although we have started to diversify our fellows groups and make our institute more accessible for highly talented thinkers from all over the world and from various backgrounds, does this mean that we are already a haven for all? That we can rest on our laurels? No, not at all. And we will discuss NIAS' ambitions to further diversify later this afternoon. But why do we aim to be an intellectual haven for all when places at NIAS are actually quite limited? Well, what we mean by haven for all is equal chances of access, based on fair and relevant criteria that are always up for discussion since we might be blind for our own biases as well. But this idea of a haven for all is not just about individual fairness. It's also about the collective context in which good arts and science flourishes. We expect that individuals from various backgrounds will contribute to better collective scholarship. The whole will be more than the sum of the parts. To value and foster the variety of perspectives of a diverse group is not an easy thing to accomplish. But we are deeply convinced that the progress of our knowledge depends on the insights of the multiplicity of perspectives, approaches, and methodologies. We at NIAS welcome debates on what defines or characterizes good research. What are our existing criteria and why so? And who has the means to contribute to good science, to good arts? At NIAS, we believe that only through collective and inclusive ways of learning, science and arts can play their role in society. Well, this afternoon we will highlight the intrinsic value of interdisciplinarity, discuss the convergence of arts and sciences, and learn more about NIAS' ambitions and actions to further diversify. I look forward to an inspiring start of an even more inspiring academic year at NIAS. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Willem Duyvendak, NIAS Director. Well, in what follows, 6 fellows from the new year group will present themselves in 3 minutes only, or will try to present themselves in 3 minutes, because they have worked a lifetime on these projects, and they will work for 5 months or 10 months on this project at NIAS this year, this academic year. And okay, so the presenters of today will be Lisa Becking, Onokome Okome, Myunji Yang, Maxime Rovert on video, Iris van Rooij on video, and Stefan Sanders. But first, let's welcome Lisa Becking.
With my head underwater, I have been ignoring humans. In my scientific research, that is. But all that will change with my time here at NIAS. I am a marine biologist. I study how plants and animals adapt to changes in their environment in the sea. And in particular, I study coral reefs. And as probably most of you know, coral reefs have been going through quite a lot of stress lately. Stress from global processes such as climate change, as well as local problems due to overfishing and pollution. But what gives me hope is that there's increasing evidence that a collapse of an ecosystem can be prevented by altering the conditions that can be managed locally. So if we can reduce the local stress, we can make coral reefs more resilient to climate change, and we can buy a little bit of time until we get our act together on a global scale. Now, one major force of local change is tourism. And I'm fascinated by this double-edged sword that tourism presents. It can aid conservation and finance nature parks through entry fees, but if left unchecked, tourism can become an amazing strain on ecosystems and societies alike. The recent anthropause due to COVID-19 has caused tourism to come to a grinding halt, and has laid bare how painfully vulnerable countries are when they rely too heavily on tourism. Now, the effects of tourism are all too often only seen through the lens of economics. And in my mind, that's only part of the story. So I've decided to come up for air and to get a better grasp of tourism and economics in relation to conservation and ecology. And I'm not doing this alone. Together with a diverse team of scientists, conservationists, educators, as well as policymakers, we aim to understand how to design marine nature parks in such a way to ensure that both the ecosystems below water, as well as the societies above water, become more resilient to climate change and increasing tourism. Now, how do you ensure that people with such diverse backgrounds and disciplines actually communicate and interact? You lock them up for about a week on a boat. So with our floating universities, we have been and will be studying different marine nature parks from degraded to pristine settings in Indonesia as well as in the Dutch Caribbean. And now at NIAS, it's the perfect place to pour over the wealth of data that we already have, because after all, NIAS is just another ship with quite a diverse crew. And I look forward to this journey of exciting views from your respective disciplines. Thank you.
Okay. The project I bring to NIAS deals with women and women in Nollywood. And the image that I share with you today is profound and iconic for the reason that it gives a very clear picture, an obvious one for that matter, about the way that popular culture perpetuates a certain kind of image of women in contemporary African popular cinema and literature. My concentration here today, which I will be dealing with in the course of my stay here, 10-month stay here, is to understand why these images are created, images that are actually anachronistic in more ways than one. The question that I ask in this study is, why does Nollywood, the popular Nigerian cinema that is not just national or continental, but that is now global, create and perpetuates women as structural spectacles for its urban culture? This image comes from a very, very interesting category of Nollywood cinema making. And this is what I have in the course of this study, the larger question of a booklet study that I will complete here, comes from the category of this cinema that I refer to as Nollywood Hallelujah video films. Which means that it's supposed to be a religious film, but yet it is a film that actually shows really, really depreciating pictures of women in that sense. Nollywood is, of course, the popular Nigerian cinema that is now very well known. And this film was produced by the Liberty Gospel Church, which is based in Calabar, southeastern Nigeria. My hope is to go back in the course of my stay here for about a week or 10 days to complete the research that I want to do. But let me just quickly point out why this kind of image is very, very important. And I want you to follow me quickly as I discuss the implications of this kind of dramatic jacket presentation of women, which creates the drama of this kind of imaging, not just in the film that many Nigerians and indeed the world will see, but from the very jacket of the video films themselves. The spectacular commercialization of the body and intent of the character there, Sonia, played by one of the most stunningly beautiful women in Nigeria, is to show what we refer here as the femme fatale, a woman that is described as a siren, a woman that destroys the world like a colossus, to use the phrase from, to paraphrase Shakespeare. She's beautiful, she's aware of it, and she is the daughter of Satan, and Satan is presented here as the water mermaid, and the water mermaid controls everything she does. Her sole purpose on earth is to lead men astray. If you look at the picture clearly, just very briefly, if you look at the picture clearly then, what you find, the group of two sets of people, those ones, the ones on the left side of that, those huge, beautiful legs, stride, and the ones on the right. Both are victims of this very beautiful woman. Victims because they ought to be, and they are shown in that sense. Here then, visually, Sonia, which is the character name in that photograph, towers above all five portraits. Under her outstretched feet is a man smiling with her head looking straight into her private areas. Under the skirt, he looks middle class, respectably dressed. He is curiously amorous and seems to be enjoying the object of his gaze. The suggestion here is that what he gazes at is the very highway to his grave. Sonia is the source of this inevitable end of this amorous but respectable man. Men must be careful of these sexually beautiful women because they are agents, acolytes of the marine spirit. The marine spirit, which actually initially was worshipped as the Mami Water goddess in many Nigerian societies and communities along the water, along the coastal area. Reiterating beautiful bodies of women as death traps serves to create graphic images in films such as Highway to the Grave of the latent evil of all women. Sonia is just one representation. As the popular saying goes, sex sells. Conscious sexuality sells even more. Highway to the Grave was a huge hit, even amongst women. And that is the reason why this kind of innocuous, seemingly inconsequential images that are not controlled by government, very, very, very insidious. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I feel extremely honored to be part of this intellectual community and to present my work at this special opening event. During my stay at NIAS, I'm planning to write my book manuscript on right-wing mobilization in South Korea from a comparative historical perspective. I aim to understand how the right has constructed its political identity and has mobilized social support. Many studies on the far right mainly focus on party politics and electoral outcomes. Instead, I am more interested in how right-wing activists coordinated street protests and engaged in grassroots organizing, and why and how ordinary citizens participated in right-wing movements. Particularly, I pay attention to the roles of right-wing intellectuals, college professors, writers, journalists, and activists in providing particular conservative narratives, disseminating their ideas, and arousing intense feelings and emotions among citizens. Elderly citizens are the main constituency of right-wing movements in South Korea, led by ultra-right evangelical leaders and former lawmakers and extreme right-wing activists. These older citizens have joined the massive anti-government right-wing protests over the last 3 years and have condemned the current Moon government as radical leftists connected to North Korea, trying to overthrow the Republic of Korea. At the protests, waving both Korean and American flags together, the protesters believed that they should defend the country and the liberal democracy from the threat of communism. So right-wing intellectuals capitalized on new social media such as YouTube and other chatting apps and actively promoted fear-mongering alternative narratives. This anti-communist narrative has huge resonance with elderly citizens because these older generations experienced the Korean War and internalized anti-communist and anti-North Korea sentiments deeply. So many senior citizens took to the streets out of intense fear and anxiety that the current government is building a communist country in the south of the Korean peninsula. By evoking tragic historical experiences and engineering fear and hate toward liberal forces, right-wing intellectuals have so far successfully mobilized senior citizens on a large scale. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maxime Rovert. My field is philosophy and intellectual history, and I am a fellow at the Netherlands Institute for Advanced Studies in the second semester 2020. My research explores the interactions between authors and thinkers from the 17th century, among which the philosopher Bento Spinoza. Spinoza is famous for a couple of deeds. He was banished from Amsterdam Jewish community when he was 24, and then lived a very peaceful life, writing his books and conversing with his friends. He conceived a very original philosophy, challenging our metaphysical conceptions of God, nature, beings, bodies, and emotions. He is considered the author of one of the most fascinating books ever written, The Ethics, that is, a philosophy book written in the form of a mathematical treatise. Now, my statement is that everything that can be said about Spinoza as a man and about his philosophy as a conceptual set of insights changes radically when you stop focusing on the individual and start studying his networks. If you don't consider the differences between the fields his friends are working in, if you admit that these people were as much interested in metaphysics as in anatomy, politics, poetry, theory of drama, chemistry, mathematics, then you come to realize that almost everything that is original and thought-provoking in Spinoza's texts come from permanent and very intense exchanges within a group of friends who were actually responsible for what we call Spinoza's philosophy. That's exactly what the collective portraits from the time illustrate. As you can see in the osteology lessons of Dr. Sebastian Herbert, people from the United Provinces loved to be portrayed as a group united by a single purpose, be that purpose knowledge, freedom, justice, truth, and in Spinoza's case, almost all of these at the same time. Now, there has been a great shift in intellectual history recently. In 2004, Dieter Heinrich studied for the first time the German idealists from the 18th century, not as authors, but as a constellation of authors. He was the first to come up with the idea that interactions are creative. This means not only individual brains can produce thinking, but also groups. This idea can change the way we look at history in general, intellectual history in particular, and it has a huge impact on our theory of mind, our understanding of innovation, and so forth. This is why I have dedicated myself to an exploration of several characters who were Spinoza's close friends, not to make them enter the pantheon of the greatest thinkers of the world, but to explore how deep we can track the interactions between intellectual and human brains. Eventually, with a few partners I gathered around the world, I plan to present a deeply renewed approach of the ethics that will not be focused on Spinoza's genius, which makes no doubt, but on collective creativity.
In the next few minutes, let me briefly tell you about the abstract adventure on which I will embark in my NIAS project. This project is necessarily abstract, as it is part of meta-science, that is the study of how science is done. I will focus on psychological science, but some of my conceptual analyses will also apply more widely. For more than 100 years, ever since psychology was born as a science in the 19th century, psychologists have believed that the experimental method makes psychology a science as opposed to mere philosophy. By using experiments and later also statistics, psychologists tried to establish effects that they could produce and reproduce in the lab. These effects would then serve as solid bricks for building a solid science of mind and behavior. But the last decade, cracks have been appearing in the discipline's walls. Many of the famous effects that psychologists claim to have observed in their labs and have published in high-standing journals turn out not replicable. This means that when different researchers try to repeat the experiments, they often, more often than expected, fail to reproduce the published effects in their labs. In other words, these published effects are likely not real. Instead, they could be statistical errors, or worse, the result of questionable research practices. This problem is now so common that psychologists are talking of a replication crisis, or a crisis of confidence. As with any problem, how you set out to solve it depends on how you diagnose its causes. Psychologists have been so married to the idea that science is built on effects that they keep seeking solutions in making experiments and the use of statistics better. This way, they try to make the bricks more solid and robust. But if we stand back for a moment and look at the cracks in the wall, we can see that the problem is not with the bricks per se. The problem is in the foundation on which the wall is built. That is what is causing the cracks. Now, in my NIAS project, I aim to address the problem at its root cause. Psychology is built on weak theoretical foundations, possibly by an eagerness to distance oneself from philosophy and by a lack of training in formal theoretical tools and methods. It is hence no surprise that cracks appear, and the problem cannot be solved with more and better bricks. Instead, I will develop new and tailored tools that psychologists can use to strengthen and partially rebuild strong theoretical foundations for our discipline, such that it can restore stability and be more future-proof again.
Very glad you can all join us. There's the picture I was looking for. Wonderful image. Used to be the cover of the National Geographic, I think in 2017. And interesting thing about this picture is that it was a predicament of how the world would look in 2050. So that's 30 years from now on. But I think if you just walk the streets of Amsterdam or Rome or wherever in the US or even in the Caribbean, that might be very familiar to what you see. My name is Stefan Sanders. I'm a Dutch writer of both fiction and non-fiction books, of essays and columns. And although I studied political sciences and philosophy at the University of Amsterdam, And although I taught at different universities, both in the US and the Netherlands, mainly creative writing, I can't look back on a brilliant academic career, not at all. I'm foremost a storyteller, and the position I now hold at the NIAS is far more the most prestigious I ever had. I am guest of the director, guest of Willem Duyvendak. It won't become any better. I was co-sponsored by the Dutch Foundation for Literature, and my main concern being here is writing a book on the current debate on racism and anti-racism. As I see it, the discussion is dominated by Northern American standards, where the dichotomy in black versus white is the default mode. This black and white scheme is now also prevalent in academic circles in Europe, although I think the European history, and not only me, the European history is quite different when it comes to white, brown, and black. Indeed, one word is missing in this debate, the word brown, or brown-skinned, or Creole, as in the Surinamese way. It's almost forbidden to use these words. One has to be speaking now of a person or people of color. But activists and critics have argumented, and I think they're right in there. If white is a color in itself, then it's a meaningless concept, because it's almost absurd. Because when I would say that I'm a POC, a person and Dutch descent, I should represent all by myself humanity at large. Even for me, that's a bit too portrait of, and will do interviews with black and brown writers, since they are masters of the words. I've written extensively on Albert Murray, the great American writer and jazz critic who died in 2013. I interviewed the philosopher Kwame Anthony Appiah, and I'm working on the Dutch rapper, actor, and songwriter Willem de Bruin, and I'm in close contact nowadays with the American in Paris writer Thomas Chatterton Williams. Why, that's my main question, why is brown or colored dismissed from the table of race relations? If we keep on talking about white and black, we miss the fact that in reality there is a continuum of ethnic relations, not a sharp distinction between black and white, as you can see here. But what about politics and the political moral practices in daily life? Well, the question is the black and white dichotomy helpful for the political struggle, or does it simplify a complex situation? And what about the reintroduction of the shadowy race term straight out of the 18th and 19th century? How harmful and dangerous is that? These are my questions, and I'm looking for answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The 6 speakers, let me say your names again. Lisa Becking, Onokome Okome, Myunji Yang, Maxime Rovert, Iris van Rooij, and Stefan Sanders. That was really great. Thank you so much. Give them another applause. Yes, please. A fellow asked me this Monday what excites me most about working at an institute such as NIAS, and well, the answer is exactly this. To be immersed in the work, the thoughts, the topics of such relevance, such power, such novelty, and for us as NIAS staff to try to provide a place where they can collaboratively advance their studies and share it with a wider audience, as we are doing today. This is what NIAS is about. And I'm really grateful. In front of the spotlights, one of our co-sponsors. So each year we celebrate one of our co-sponsors. We have 14 co-sponsors, of which we're really fond, and without whom we could not survive as an institute. Last year we had L'Oréal UNESCO here with their fellowship for women in science. And this year we would like to give attention to the Academy of Arts, which is also part of the Netherlands Academy of Arts and Science. I would like to invite Micha Hamel. Give him a warm applause. Thank you for joining us. You can take a seat. Micha Hamel is composer, conductor, poet and researcher. And moreover, he is the chairman of the Arts Science track at the Academy of Arts and lector performance practice at Codarts in Rotterdam. Micha Hamel, thank you for joining us. Furthermore, I'm inviting on stage Robert Glas. Welcome. Take a seat over there. Give him an applause, thank you. Robert is filmmaker and photographer and currently artist in residence at the Rijksacademie here in Netherlands at NIAS in the first semester of 2019-2020. Robert, welcome. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I will take a seat with you. So, Robert, let me start with you. How have you been doing after leaving NIAS?
Horrible. Yeah.
Horrible.
No, I had a great time at NIAS, and I was so lucky to be part of the first semester, so it was all COVID-free. Yeah, and after that I went straight into the residency at the Rijksacademie, which was disrupted by the COVID crisis, of course. Yeah, but other than that, I'm doing okay. Yeah.
Great to have you back on the NIAS stage. Well, just for your information, since 6 years, NIAS hosts an artist in residence each year, 1 or 2 per year, besides a couple of journalists and a couple of writers in residence. These artists work on a project that really tries to connect arts with science. And so, Robert, just to start with you, can you briefly tell us something about the project that you conducted at NIAS and why you thought NIAS would be a place to work on that project?
Yeah, sure. I was about to. I wrote a film script at NIAS of a short film of half an hour, and the film is about risk assessment models that parole officers use to predict whether somebody, predict the likelihood that someone will recommit a crime, will commit a crime in the future. And I was interested in how that way of looking at a human being and that way of looking at agency and free will, how it affects our conception of guilt, basically, in criminal law. To me, already when thinking of this project and embarking on the research, I figured that NIAS would be the perfect spot to write it, being surrounded by so many scholars, and that worked out just fine, I guess. I'm not the one to judge, but yeah, I had a good time there, yeah.
Great to hear. Yeah, so Micha, for you as a chairman of the Arts Science track, why do you believe it's important to connect arts and science, and what would be for you the added value of this connection?
Well, we just heard from Mr. Rover here on the screen that connections can produce creativity, and I couldn't agree more with that. Well, of course, we have different forms of knowledge. There's academic knowledge, but there are more modern from citizen science that there's a lot of knowledge also in the public, under the population. But in the arts, there's a lot of high quality knowledge, which is embodied either in objects or in practices, and that is called embodied knowledge. So I think that it would be wise to make all these knowledges operational by actually trying to connect them and to see what comes out of that when we take them seriously on both in both fields, both areas.
Really great. And so indeed, at NIAS consists of scholars. So Robert, for me, I'm eager to know did you feel, how was it for you to be the only artist in residence among this large group of scholars? Did it indeed help you enough, or how did you experience this?
Yeah, I remember like exactly a year ago when I was on the brink of embarking on this that adventure, that I thought, oh, it's just me with all those scientists. And just during the introduction week, I figured out that, oh, but it's actually not a block of science. There's people interested in so many fields, and they're sometimes, yeah, maybe this is too negative, but they can also be quite estranged from each other, or estranged is not put right, but I really felt that there's all these islands also within the arts, and I'm just one of these, within the sciences, and arts is just one of it's just another island, yeah. So I didn't feel that opposition that completely was shattered in the first week, yeah.
Yeah, so this is, I think, really interesting to hear, because the arts field or the cultural field and the academic field deal with similar problems in terms of that they can easily become or get into a legitimacy crisis, right? That people can think of art as artists as subsidy seekers, or or for academics to be producers of alternative facts. The replication crisis, which is real. So, do you also think or feel that there is a connection, that there is something for arts and science to bond, to strengthen each other, and to show the importance and legitimacy of the type of knowledge that both arts and science are producing?
Well, I would state it in another way, in such a way that there's knowledge, but there's also knowing, and knowing is what we are after in the end, because knowing is wisdom. So we have to what we're doing with all these forms of knowledge is trying to produce something that we can act upon the planet and connect with each other wisely, and that we do wise things. So in order to get there, it's sometimes, I'm not saying that every project should be an art science project. Hell no, no, thank you. But it would be good to see whether we can connect in such a way that it leads to productive knowledge that leads to wisdom in the end.
I'm not
claiming wisdom for the arts, though. No, that art possesses wisdom, not at all.
It's a pathway towards.
But no. But it's the way you look. The way I look at knowledge is very free, in the sense that it can be. I'm working on a project at this moment with multiple methodologies, in which we have artistic research and academic research covering different parts of the same project, and actually interlocking also. So, and then with this, in this project, we try to solve a very complex problem, and we are, well, I don't know whether we'll succeed, because we have another year to go, but yeah.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
So let me follow up on that, because we at NIAS are initiating a series of arts and science this year in collaboration with the Rijksacademie and the Academy of Arts. And I would be very curious to learn from the two of you, what should we think of? What should we not forget? What might be challenges, opportunities, if we initiate a series in which we want to combine arts and science? What can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen, and what's the best thing?
The worst thing what can happen is that we embark again on this endless discussion on what artistic research means. I've been to a number of lectures where they try to figure that out, and yeah, for me it's a bit of a pitfall, because it's so much focusing about the process, and the real in my experience, the real difference between I think the process while having lunch at NIAS, we had talks about what we did that day, and some, especially maybe in my practice, and also the moment in which my practice was, there was lots of similarities between the process. What you do, you read a lot of papers, you try to think it, and you write a little bit. But what the real difference is not so much the process, but really the outcome, and where you have to decide on form. Yeah. So I'm not sure whether this is leading somewhere, but please do not embark on the discussion about artistic research.
Very clear. And what would we?
I would say it's interesting to I agree with you, because it's a lot about syncing vocabularies, and I would not. I would absolutely. I would absolutely take a lot of time to talk about methodologies and about how they connect, and it's because of my personal experience. And I liked the thing that Lisa brought up, that to lock people up. That would be that's really wise. To when you work together, you have to spend a lot of time together. Also for your personal exchanges, but also to really get a grasp of what the other is doing and what it's about. Yeah.
And what will be the best thing that might be the best thing that can happen during these arts and science series?
Well, good research results. I mean,
good research.
Yeah, it's simple as that. I mean, we have to be serious about what we're doing. So. If we're doing research, then we have to have an outcome, and that outcome should be high level. Sorry to be so simple, but
no, very clear. Robert?
Yeah, I was even more simple. Maybe just collaborations would be great, right? If people meet and across fields and have the and find out that they have something in common and they want to do something together, which benefit both, and that's quite hard because it's not always going back and forth. That's the best thing that can happen, I think. Yeah.
I'm not saying that a good research result is a paper or so. I'm not saying that. It can also be a product or a prototype of some kind.
Well, I hope you will help us this year to establish the series of arts and science, and I hope to see you all at the public events that we will organize. Thank you, Micha. Thank you, Robert. Give them a warm applause.
Thank you.
So yes, we're coming to an end, to the closing of this event, and I would like to take you a little forward in time and to look forward to what is ahead of us in the academic year of 2020-2021. It's a difficult year. It will be a very special year, and not only because of COVID-19 and because we have all these new regulations and we try to establish social connections, a new intellectual network while keeping an eye on our physical distance and hygiene. That is hard, but the nice thing is that NIAS will celebrate its 50th anniversary in 2021. This means that we will take time during this year to reflect together with our partners, together with the Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Science, together with our co-sponsors, together with our alumni and current fellows, and with a wider audience. We want to reflect on our position as an Institute for Advanced Studies in the field of academia, but also the cultural field. We will look into how NIAS has developed over the last 5 decades, and how it has come to transform from a retreat for mostly senior male academia in the starting days towards this open intellectual haven NIAS is today, or wants to be today. But although NIAS has already made huge transformations over the last decade, not the least with the move from NIAS from the dunes of Wassenaar to the lively city center of Amsterdam, we will also dwell on the challenges that NIAS is still facing in regards to making this haven for free, independent, and already pointed out to, for those who are not yet supported by the institutional structures that are in place and that shape current academic and cultural fields. So NIAS has already started over the last 2 years to implement changes in the selection procedure by broadening and diversifying our network of reviewers and our academic advisory board. And we are more than ever actively engaging with scholars and artists from underrepresented countries and regions, such as Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. Establishing a more balanced year group in terms of gender, phase in career, so not only seniors, but also early career and middle career, cultural backgrounds, but also in terms of who has easy access to scholarly and artistic success based on class or social networks. That is not an easy and not even a self-evident task to take up. And as we are learning by doing, we are becoming very aware that existing institutional structures like ours are robust and not changed overnight. But still, NIAS is taking small and convinced steps towards opening up our intellectual haven to an even wider range of scholars and researchers, artistic researchers, by establishing regional NIAS boards with ambassadors who are able to scout and support talented thinkers all over the world in the regions which are currently hard to reach from within our own or the existing networks. In June 2021, we will host a 3-day conference with the overarching team of belonging. And here around this team, researchers, artists, writers, journalists will gather and will really explore and establish new ways to broaden our perspectives and knowledge through collaborative learning. So we hope to welcome you all to one of the many events that NIAS will organize this academic year, and especially in the year 2021. So keep track of us via our website, subscribe for our newsletter, and follow us on social media. And you are all highly invited, warmly invited to immerse yourself with us in this intellectual haven for all. But before we stop and round up this night, I would like to invite Poliana Vieira again with her pianist. I hope she can hear me. And yes, she's here. And okay, well, give them a hand. Perhaps they will come if we applaud. And this is the second song from her album, Moods. And thank you all for being here. Thank you to Film Museum I, who was really grateful. We are really grateful to host this event here. And thank you for joining us. And if there's no music, I will sing a song. No, I won't. Thank you all. So, okay. There she is. Give her a warm applause.
Good afternoon. I'm by myself right now. So I'm going to sing a song for you until Jean-Philippe is here. We understood that we would perform a little bit later. So those are the little things where you have to be prepared for everything. A dream is a wish your heart makes when you're fast asleep. In dreams you will lose your heartaches. Wherever you wish for, you keep. Have faith in your dreams, and someday your rainbow will come smiling through. No matter how your heart is grieving, if you keep on believing, the dreams that you wish will come true. May I have an applause for Jean-Philippe and Angelina? I would like to ask you to sing with me, but we forgot a little detail that it's not really possible to sing all together in one room. So I'm just gonna do it by myself. Yes. Hey, yeah. Hey, yeah. Oh, 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 à procura de uma ria onde possa ir tranquila, tão tranquila com a corrente, para chegar ao oceano, oceano de ideias que me alimentei, já que o corpo necessita de toda a hidratação possível, de uma forma ou de outra. Sinto que faço muito esforço, em vez de deixar a corrente da vida me levar ao meu sonho e sentir o abençoe. Puxada pelos dois lados, cabeça quer de mais e erros são cometidos. Fonte da lágrima chegou ao meu rosto, suplicando pelo oceano que espera por mim, sussurrando para deixar a corrente da vida me levar ao meu sonho e sentir o abençoe, para deixar a corrente da vida me levar ao meu sonho e sentir o abençoe. Confia, confia, é só uma fase, pois o universo tem muitas vezes um plano melhor que o nosso. Confia, confia, é só uma fase, pois o universo tem muitas vezes um plano melhor que o nosso. Confia, confia, é só uma fase, pois o universo tem muitas vezes um plano melhor que o nosso. Confia, confia, é só uma fase, pois o universo tem muitas vezes um plano melhor, plano melhor, plano melhor. Just trust the process, just trust it, the process, just trust it, just trust it.
Thank you, Poliana Vieira and Junior Ancelio. Thank you. This was it. Thank you all for coming. Now we have to leave this room in a very special COVID way. So let's